Hey guys! Right now on Patreon, there's an active poll deciding which story drops next, so if you want to have a real say in what gets published, hurry over and vote. Your choice could shape the next steamy release. The link is in the description and comments. Jump in quick before the poll closes. The village slept uneasily under a thin blanket of winter frost that crunched faintly underfoot on the quieter paths. December winds whispered through the bare cherry trees lining the main avenue, carrying faint echoes of distant alarms. Akatsuki movements had intensified in recent weeks, with sightings of blue-skinned scouts wielding monstrous chakra and paper angels fluttering silently on the horizon like omens of doom. Patrols had doubled along the walls, ANBU masks glinting in the moonlight as they leaped from rooftop to rooftop. Naruto knew time was running out, not just for Konoha's defenses against the looming invasion, but for himself personally. The pocket watch no longer felt like a mere tool or secret weapon. It felt like a living parasite, burrowing deeper into his chakra pathways with every prolonged use. His once boundless reserves recovered slower now, leaving him winded after even moderate training sessions, and faint blue veins occasionally spiderwebbed across his palms and wrists after long freezes, pulsing like the watch's runes before fading. Headaches lingered in the mornings, sharp and insistent, but the hunger, the raw, insatiable need to possess, to touch, to claim, drowned out the warnings every single time. He needed answers, real ones, before the artifact consumed him entirely. Before heading to the Hokage Tower, Naruto made a detour, one he told himself was necessary to scout the village's night defenses. In truth, the watch's pull had grown too strong to ignore even for the short journey. He found himself near the temporary quarters assigned to visiting medical nin and allies, where Tayuya, the sound Kunoichi captured and now under heavy probationary watch, was confined to a guarded apartment. Her fiery red hair and sharp tongue had always irritated him during their brief clashes years ago, but tonight, curiosity twisted into something darker. She was awake, pacing her sparsely furnished room in nothing but a loose gray tank top and black shorts, cursing softly under her breath about her restrictions. The single guard outside was frozen mid-patrol as Naruto slipped through the window and pressed the crown. Time halted. Tayuya froze mid-step, one hand raking through her long crimson ponytail, her athletic body tense with frustration. Her tank top clung to her sweat-dampened skin, outlining firm chest with dark nipples visible through the thin fabric, and her shorts rode low on sharp hips. Naruto didn't hesitate. He pushed her against the wall, yanking the tank top up to expose her toned stomach and full chest. They were perfect. High and round, nipples hardening instantly as he pinched and twisted them roughly. He sucked one hard into his mouth, biting down just enough to leave marks. Want the full uncensored 18+ scene? Only $4 on Patreon. 400+ scorching hot episodes. Cleaning her quickly and redressing her, he left her frozen in the same pacing pose, a faint flush on her cheeks that hadn't been there before. Time resumed as he slipped out the window. Tayuya stumbled, catching herself on the wall with a sharp gasp. Hey guys, over on Patreon, you'll find chapters bursting with way more steamy lemons than anything here on YouTube, plus exclusive secret ones that will never hit YouTube. So don't wait. Rush over and subscribe now. Updates drop way more frequently, with twice the content every single day. The link's waiting for you in the description and comments. Go unlock it all. What the fuck? She muttered, thighs clenching as unexplained heat and wetness flooded her senses. She shook her head violently, cursing louder to cover the confusion. Rumors had circulated quietly among the higher-ranking shinobi in ANBU about a forbidden scroll hidden deep in the Hokage's restricted archives. An ancient record said to date back to the Sage of Six Paths era itself, detailing lost artifacts capable of manipulating the very fabric of time. If anyone or anything could explain the watch's true origins, its limits, and why it seemed to grow stronger with each use, it would be there. But the archives were sealed behind layers of intricate barriers, fuinjutsu traps, and chakra locks that only Tsunade or a select few could fully bypass without triggering village-wide alerts. Naruto waited until the absolute dead of night, when the moon hung low and pale, casting long shadows across the Hokage Tower's red roof. Even the usual night guards changed shifts in predictable patterns he'd observed over weeks. Slipping through the tower's lesser-known service corridors, memories of childhood pranks guiding his steps, he paused time just long enough to bypass the outer seals. His chakra flared painfully in protest as he forced the watch to hold the freeze for nearly 20 minutes straight, the longest he'd ever managed. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cold, and his vision blurred at the edges as he navigated the frozen world. Guards mid-stride, torches with flames locked in eternal flicker, dust motes hanging suspended like tiny stars in the dim hallway lanterns. Inside the restricted chamber, the air was stale and heavy with the scent of old parchment and sealing wax. Scrolls lined the stone shelves in perfect, undisturbed rows, each protected by faint glowing wards that shimmered harmlessly in the frozen timeline. Naruto's blue eyes scanned quickly, heart pounding from both exertion and anticipation. He found it within minutes, a weathered bamboo case tucked in the furthest corner, marked with the exact same glowing runes that adorned his watch, pulsing faintly as if recognizing its twin. Unrolling it carefully on a nearby reading pedestal, his eyes scanned the faded ink under the suspended lantern light. The script was ancient, interspersed with diagrams of swirling temporal energy and warnings in bold strokes. The Chronos relic, forged in the age of the sage, grants dominion over the river of time. A single press halts the flow for the wielder alone. But each pause siphons the user's life essence, chakra, vitality, and soul threads alike. Prolonged or frequent use awakens the relic's hunger. It will seek to freeze the wielder eternally within its void if balance is not maintained. Only one of pure intent, tempered by restraint, may wield it without succumbing. Naruto's blood ran cold as he read the final lines, a chill unrelated to the winter air settling in his bones. Balance. Restraint. He hadn't achieved anything close to balance since the first innocent touch with Sakura. The watch had twisted something inside him, turning curiosity into obsession, affection into possession. Yet even as fear coiled tight in his gut like a kunai twist, arousal followed immediately after, hot and insistent. Because waiting in the archive's dimly lit antechamber, cataloging newly arrived medical scrolls under a single hanging lantern, was Karen. She had arrived in Konoha several weeks ago under a fragile truce agreement brokered by Tsunade and the provisional Sasuke retrieval team. Her red hair fell like a striking slash of crimson against the dark room, glasses perched low on her nose as she concentrated on labeling and sorting. Sasuke's former teammate turned uneasy ally. Her unique sensory abilities and healing chakra had proven invaluable in detecting Akatsuki probes and treating wounded scouts. She wore a tight gray top that hugged her generous curves like a second skin, accentuating her hourglass figure, and a short black skirt that rode high on her pale thighs when she bent over the table. Her red eyes were focused intently on her task, one hand absently twirling a strand of hair. Naruto's hand closed around the watch almost automatically, the metal warm and pulsing against his palm. Time froze again, another painful drain on his already strained reserves. Karen stood mid-reach for a high-shelf scroll, one hip cocked seductively, her full lips slightly parted in concentration. The lantern light cast golden highlights on her pale skin and the swell of her chest straining against the gray fabric. He approached slowly, the scroll's dire warning still echoing in his mind even as raw desire overrode every rational thought. Karen had always been intense. Her former obsession with Sasuke had bordered on madness, a passionate fire that burned hot and bright. Naruto wondered, with a dark thrill, what that kind of single-minded devotion would feel like if redirected, even momentarily, toward him. He started gently at first, almost reverently, brushing crimson strands from her face with trembling fingers, trailing them down the delicate column of her neck to the generous swell of her chest. They were larger than most he'd encountered. Soft yet firm, spilling over his palms as he cupped them through the thin fabric. He pushed her top up slowly, inch by inch, exposing pale skin and a lacy black brow that barely contained her fullness. Unhooking it with practiced ease, He freed her heavy chest completely, dark pink nipples already hardening in the still, cool air of the chamber. Lowering his head, he took one into his mouth, sucking hard while pinching and rolling the other between his fingers until it pebbled tight and sensitive. Karen's body responded even in frozen stasis, subtle flushes spreading across her chest like blooming roses, her skin warming under his touch. Want the full uncensored 18+ scene? Only $4 on Patreon. 400+ scorching hot episodes. Panting heavily, he cleaned her meticulously with a spare cloth from the table, redressing her with careful precision, smoothing every wrinkle, repositioning her glasses, and placing her exactly as she'd been mid-reach. Then he turned back to the forbidden scroll, pausing time once more, ignoring the sharp stab of pain in his temples, to copy key sections with a stolen ink brush and blank parchment. The warnings, the diagrams, potential countermeasures, all transcribed in hurried strokes. Time resumed with a lurch that left him dizzy. Karen gasped sharply, dropping the scroll she'd been reaching for with a clatter. Her knees buckled as she gripped the table hard enough to whiten her knuckles, a low, desperate moan escaping her lips. What the? Sasuke, no, wait! Her hand flew instinctively between her legs, pressing hard against the aching heat as her body shook with violent aftershocks. Red eyes widened behind her glasses in confusion and overwhelming pleasure, biting her lip hard enough to draw a bead of blood as her thighs clenched rhythmically. Naruto slipped away silently through the corridors, heart pounding, the copied scroll tucked safely inside his jacket. The drain left him lightheaded, leaning against a wall for support as the world spun briefly. But the night wasn't over, not yet. As he moved swiftly through the village rooftops, leaping from tile to tile under the fading moonlight, a flicker of unnatural movement caught his sharp eyes, paper shuriken dissolving into white butterflies near the abandoned old Uchiha district. Konan, the Akatsuki's paper angel herself, scouting alone under the cover of darkness as part of Pain's escalating reconnaissance. Her amber eyes glowed faintly in the shadows, short blue hair framing a serene yet deadly face, her body wrapped in the signature black cloak adorned with red clouds. She moved like a ghost among the ruined compounds, paper wings folded beneath the fabric, gathering intel on Konoha's weakened districts. Naruto's exhaustion warred fiercely with the dark desire surging through him. The watch burned against his skin like a brand, urging him on despite the risk. Konan was no ordinary target. She was an S-class criminal, loyal to Pain, and dangerously perceptive. He dropped down silently behind her in a narrow, deserted alley between crumbling walls. Time froze once more, his chakra screaming in raw protest, vision tunneling briefly from the strain. Konan stood mid-step, one pale hand forming a precise seal, paper sheets suspended around her like a protective halo of white wings. He approached reverently, almost afraid to disturb the ethereal stillness. Even frozen, she radiated quiet, unyielding power, a woman who had survived wars and loss. Carefully, reverently, he parted the heavy Akatsuki cloak, revealing the high-collared robe beneath, and nothing else underneath. Her body was lean and pale as porcelain, small chest with dark nipples standing pert in the cold, an intricate purple paper flower marking on her lower abdomen where her technique originated. Want the full uncensored 18+ scene? Only $4 on Patreon. 400+ scorching hot episodes. He cleaned her with the utmost care, repositioning her mid-seal and ensuring not a single paper was out of place, then fled to a distant rooftop before resuming time. From his vantage point, he watched as Konan staggered forward mid-step, paper exploding outward in a massive defensive burst that shredded nearby debris before she regained control. Her hand pressed hard to her lower stomach, amber eyes widening in rare shock and something darker. Recognition, perhaps, of foreign chakra lingering within her. She scanned the alley with deadly focus, but Naruto was already gone. He collapsed in his small apartment as the first hints of dawn painted the sky pale pink, the copied scroll clutched in trembling hands stained faintly blue from emerging veins. The warnings were clearer than ever. The watch was killing him slowly, carving away pieces of his life force with every indulgence. But as he drifted into uneasy, exhausted sleep, the hunger whispered louder than fear or pain. One more night. Just one more. Always one more. The copied scroll's warnings haunted Naruto's every waking moment like a constant shadow that refused to leave. Blue veins now lingered for hours on his hands and forearms, fading only after long, painful meditation sessions, and his once limitless chakra felt sluggish, heavy, like wading through thick mud during even the simplest jutsu practice. Tsunade had definitely noticed during their last briefing, her sharp amber eyes narrowing suspiciously as she watched him rub his temples for the third time in 10 minutes. "You look like hell, brat," she'd said bluntly, slamming her sake cup down hard enough to rattle the desk. "If you're hiding something, spit it out." Naruto had forced his brightest grin, laughing it off as overtraining with sage mode and lack of sleep. "Just excited to kick Akatsuki butt, Granny!" She'd let it slide with a warning growl, but he could feel her gaze lingering as he left the office. The Akatsuki threat loomed closer than ever. Pain scouts had been repelled twice in the past week alone, leaving scorched training grounds, wounded shinobi, and a village on permanent edge. Children no longer played freely in the streets after dark, and every rooftop had at least 2 A and B watching the horizon. To lift morale and gather critical intel on Akatsuki supply routes, Tsunade assigned Naruto a solo reconnaissance mission: infiltrate a suspected cache hidden in the ruins of an ancient Uzumaki ceiling shrine on a remote, fog-shrouded island off the Fire Country coast. "Be careful out there," she'd repeated, voice softer than usual. "No unnecessary heroics. Just get in, confirm the location, and get out. I mean it, Naruto." The journey by small fishing boat took almost a full day. The sea was choppy under heavy gray skies, cold salt spray stinging his face as he gripped the rail and stared at the horizon. His mind raced the entire time, flashes of frozen encounters with Sakura's flushed cheeks, Tsunade's commanding curves, Hinata's shy innocence, and now the terrifying warnings from the scroll mixing into a storm of guilt and craving. The watch felt heavier than ever in his inner pocket, its cracked face a constant reminder of his growing weakness. By the time the island's jagged cliffs appeared through the mist at dusk, exhaustion tugged at every muscle, but raw determination pushed him forward. The shrine was breathtaking and heartbreaking at once, a haunting labyrinth of crumbling red torii gates half swallowed by thick vines, faded ceiling arrays etched into weathered stone pillars that still hummed faintly with residual Uzumaki chakra. Moonlight filtered through the dense canopy overhead, casting silver patterns on the moss-covered ground. Naruto moved silently, kunai drawn, senses stretched to their limit for traps or hidden guards. The deeper he went, the stronger the pull from his pocket became, until he reached the heart chamber, a circular room with a massive, cracked Uzumaki temporal seal embedded in the floor. Ancient, swirling patterns glowing faintly, said to have been used in forbidden clan rituals to glimpse possible futures or commune with ancestors across time. He crouched to examine it, tracing the familiar runes with cautious fingers. The pocket watch suddenly vibrated violently, runes flaring bright blue in violent resonance with the floor seal. A low hum filled the chamber, building to a deafening roar that shook dust from the walls. Naruto tried to leap back, but invisible force pinned him in place. Both artifacts shattered simultaneously in a blinding explosion of azure light and raw temporal energy that tore through the air like a hurricane made of pure chakra. When his vision finally cleared and the ringing in his ears faded, Naruto was no longer in the ruined shrine. He stood in the middle of a bustling, sunlit Konoha street, but this was not his Konoha. The buildings were older, roofs freshly thatched, wooden signs brightly painted with advertisements for dango and new ninja tools. The Hokage monument on the distant mountain showed only 3 faces: Hashirama, Tobirama, and a young Hiruzen still in his prime. The air smelled cleaner, filled with the sweet scent of street vendors grilling yakitori and children's laughter without the weight of orphanhood or war. Civilians wore slightly outdated fashion. Women in longer sleeves, men in whiter happy coats, and shinobi headbands gleamed newer, unmarred by recent battles. The village felt alive, hopeful, peaceful in a way Naruto had only ever seen in old photographs. His heart stopped completely as a familiar, boisterous laugh rang out nearby, cutting through the market chatter like a bell he'd only ever heard in dreams. Kushina Uzumaki, his mother, alive, vibrant, and very much real. Her long, fiery red hair flowed like living flame down her back, tied in a loose ponytail that bounced with every energetic step. Violet eyes sparkled with mischief as she haggled loudly with a vegetable vendor over the price of tomatoes. "Come on, old man! These are worth half that price. Don't try to cheat a fellow redhead databane." She couldn't have been older than 25, heavily pregnant with him, her rounded belly proudly displayed under a loose, flowing green dress that hugged her swollen chest and wide, maternal hips. The dress fluttered slightly in the warm breeze, revealing strong, toned legs that spoke of her jonin prowess even while carrying a child. Walking arm in arm with her was Mikoto Uchiha, Sasuke's mother, elegant and composed, a soft smile on her lips as she watched Kushina's performance. Her long black hair was pulled into a low ponytail, onyx eyes warm with amusement. She carried a woven basket filled with groceries, her dark kimono-style top and matching skirt accentuating a graceful, curvaceous figure that radiated quiet strength and maternal beauty. The two women were best friends, chatting and laughing as they strolled toward the Uzumaki compound on the village outskirts, the late afternoon sun painting golden highlights in their hair. Naruto's knees nearly buckled. Tears blurred his vision instantly. This was the past, years before the Ninetales attack, before Kyuubi's rampage, before his parents' deaths, before everything in his life went wrong. His mother, alive, breathing, laughing, carrying him. He wanted to run to her, to hug her, to scream that he was her son, that he'd grown up strong, that he missed her every single day. But he couldn't. He knew he couldn't change anything. The cracked watch was worse now, its face spiderwebbed with fractures, glass fogged in places. But when he pressed the crown in blind panic, time still froze, though weaker than ever, the drain hitting like a sledgehammer to his temples, vision tunneling briefly. He followed them through the frozen world, heart pounding with a chaotic storm of overwhelming longing, soul-deep grief, and the dark, forbidden desire that the watch had twisted into his very core. The streets became silent statues, vendors frozen mid-haggle, children mid-laugh, birds eternally suspended above rooftops, cherry blossom petals hanging in the air like pink snowflakes. Kushina and Mikoto had paused mid-step in the quiet, sun-dappled garden behind the Uzumaki family home. A peaceful haven Naruto had only seen in photographs, vibrant flower beds bursting with color, a small koi pond sparkling under the sun, stone benches beneath a large cherry tree just beginning to bud, and a wooden swing swaying forever still. Kushina was mid-laugh, mouth open in joy, one hand resting protectively on her belly, the other gesturing animatedly as she told some story. Mikoto stood beside her, smiling softly, basket set down on the grass, one hand lightly touching Kushina's arm in affectionate support. Naruto approached on trembling legs, the weight of what he was about to do crashing over him like a tidal wave of guilt and need. He knew this was wrong on every level. His own mother, Sasuke's mother, but the watch's corruption had long since burned away his restraint. He started with Kushina. Standing before her frozen form, he cupped her face gently with shaking hands, those familiar whisker marks he'd inherited etched on her cheeks, her vibrant red hair spilling like warm silk over his fingers. "Mom!" he whispered, voice breaking completely, tears rolling down his face in rivers. For a long, aching moment he simply held her, forehead pressed to hers, breathing in her scent, spicy and warm, like cinnamon, summer rain, and home. He traced every feature he'd only ever seen in faded pictures. The curve of her smile, the spark in her violet eyes, the way her hair caught the sunlight. Want the full uncensored 18+ scene? Only $4 on Patreon. 400+ scorching hot episodes. At last, he cleaned them meticulously, using water from the koi pond, soft cloths from the nearby laundry line, every gentle wipe filled with trembling care. He wiped away every trace, smoothed every wrinkle in their clothing. Retied Mikoto's top with perfect precision, rearranged Kushina's dress and hair exactly as it had been. He even picked up the fallen grocery basket and placed it back in Mikoto's frozen hand. When he stepped back, they looked untouched, beautiful, happy mid-laughter. The watch flickered dangerously in his grip, runes dim and erratic, glass cracked so badly he could barely see the face. It felt warm, too warm, like it might shatter completely. Time resumed with a painful, nauseating lurch that sent him stumbling. Kushina staggered slightly, one hand flying protectively to her belly as a soft, confused moan escaped her lips. Mikoto! I feel so strange all of a sudden, like my whole body's on fire, Databane. She murmured breathlessly, thighs clenching together, a deep flush spreading across her chest and neck, nipples visibly hard through her green dress. Mikoto caught her friend's arm for support, equally flushed. Cheeks crimson, breathing shallow and rapid, nipples straining against her dark top. Kushina, me too, like a dream, a really intense, wonderful dream. They exchanged wide-eyed, aroused glances, hands unconsciously drifting to their lower stomachs, either understanding the sudden overwhelming heat coursing through their bodies, the unexplained wetness between their thighs, the lingering ache of pleasure that made their knees weak. Naruto fled the garden on silent, shaking feet, tears streaming unchecked down his face as he vanished into the past version of Konoha's streets. He ducked into alleys, scaled walls, hid on rooftops, anywhere to avoid being seen, to avoid changing anything. The cracked watch pulsed weakly in his pocket, its power fading fast, chakra drain leaving him light-headed and trembling. He had to find a way back to his own time. Before the past consumed him entirely, before he broke something that could never be fixed, or before he lost the last pieces of the boy he used to be to the monster the watch had made him. The cracked watch was dying. Naruto could feel it with every weak, irregular pulse against his chest, like a heartbeat slowing to its final, faltering beats. The blue runes flickered erratically, sometimes refusing to respond for minutes at a time, leaving him in normal flow while panic clawed at his throat. He had spent what felt like days, though time was unreliable now, wandering the past version of Konoha, hiding in shadows and on rooftops, stealing glimpses of Kushina from afar. He watched her train lightly in the garden despite her pregnancy, laugh brightly with Minato when the blonde Hokage-to-be came home from missions, rub her belly protectively and sing soft Uzumaki lullabies to the child inside him. Every moment was pure torture and the most precious treasure he'd ever known. The guilt from what he'd done in that garden gnawed at him constantly, a black rot spreading through his soul, but the terror of being trapped forever in a timeline he didn't belong to outweighed even that. He couldn't change anything major. He wouldn't dare risk erasing his own existence. He had to get back, at any cost. Desperate and running out of options, Naruto returned to the Uzumaki compound one final time under cover of deep night. The village slept peacefully around him, unaware of the intruder from the future skulking through its streets. Slipping past the simple wards, child's play compared to the advanced seals of his era, he entered the sealed family shrine room where Kushina kept her personal fuinjutsu tools and experimental seals. The room smelled of fresh ink, old paper, and the faint spicy scent that was uniquely his mother's. Scrolls were neatly organized on cedar shelves, brushes and inkstones laid out on a low table beside half-finished ceiling arrays. In the center of the tatami floor was a small Uzumaki ritual circle, similar to the shattered one on the island, but smaller and more personal, meant for meditation, minor space-time experiments, and bloodline resonance rituals. Naruto knelt shakily in the circle, placing the shattered watch in the exact center. His hands trembled violently as he bit his thumb and smeared blood across the runes, Uzumaki blood to Uzumaki seal. He channeled what little chakra he could spare into it, pain lancing through his temples like hot pokers, blue veins crawling up his arms and neck like frost on glass. The runes on the watch flared weakly at first, then brighter, resonating with the circle's red Uzumaki seals in a swirling dance of crimson and azure. A low hum built rapidly, the air thickening with raw temporal energy that made the room's shadows twist unnaturally. He pressed the crown one final, desperate time, pouring everything he had left into it. The world shattered again in a violent, screaming storm of blue and red light that felt like it was tearing his very soul apart. When the blinding flash finally faded and the nausea passed, Naruto collapsed hard onto cool, smooth tile flooring that felt unnaturally cold against his cheek. The air smelled sharply sterile, hospital antiseptic mixed with ozone from advanced machinery, and the faint hum of electricity running through walls. Harsh fluorescent lights buzzed overhead in long, uninterrupted rows. He was in a wide, pristine corridor with sleek white walls lined with holographic displays flickering real-time medical data, vital signs, chakra flow scans, and security feeds. Large reinforced windows showed a vastly expanded Konoha skyline. Towering buildings covered in solar panels and vertical green gardens, sky bridges connecting districts high above the streets, massive transparent defensive barriers shimmering faintly in the night like soap bubbles, and silent flying drones patrolling in perfect formation. This was the future. Far into the future, decades, perhaps half a century or more. His heart raced wildly as he pushed himself up on trembling arms, legs barely able to support his weight. The watch was now completely dark. No glow, no hum, no response at all when he smashed the crown desperately against the floor. Dead. Utterly lifeless in his palm, glass cracked into a spiderweb that cut his skin. Blood smeared across the metal. He was stranded, truly, completely stranded. Voices echoed from around the corner, young, female, sharp with intellect and familiarity that made his blood run cold and his stomach twist. Told you the new chakra scanner would pick up anomalies eventually, Sumire. We're not supposed to be in the restricted research wing after hours. If security catches us, Lord Seventh will have our heads. Relax, Sarada. If there really is a temporal distortion like the sensors registered, Lord Seventh will want us to investigate first. We're the leading researchers in temporal and interdimensional chakra theory in the entire village. Who else is qualified? Besides, the signature is strangely familiar. Naruto's breath caught in his throat. Sarada Uchiha and Sumire Keikai, both fully grown, in their early to mid-20s, wearing crisp white lab coats over modern Boruto-era ninja gear that blended tradition with cutting-edge technology. Sarada's black hair was longer now, falling in sleek waves past her shoulders, framing her sharp, beautiful face with red-rimmed glasses perched intelligently on her nose. Her Sharingan lay dormant, but the confidence in her dark eyes was unmistakable. Sasuke's fire tempered with Sakura's precision and intellect. Sumire's dark violet hair was tied in a practical high ponytail, her gentle features sharpened by years of rigorous scientific pursuit and field experience, eyes bright with quiet determination and curiosity. They were breathtaking, mature, brilliant, powerful in ways their younger selves could only dream of. Sarada's lab coat did little to hide her athletic yet curvaceous figure. Full, high chest straining against a low-cut black top that revealed a hint of lace bra, narrow waist flaring into rounded hips hugged by tight dark pants that accentuated long, toned legs. Sumire was softer, more voluptuous. Her coat opened to reveal a fitted purple dress that clung desperately to heavy, full chest and soft thighs, the fabric stretching enticingly with every movement, hem riding high enough to show smooth skin. And they were walking straight toward the exact spot where Naruto now crouched, half hidden behind a supply cart loaded with medical tools. Panic surged like ice water through his veins. He pressed the dead watch crown out of pure habit. Nothing. No response. He ducked fully into an empty advanced research room just off the corridor, heart hammering so loud he was sure they'd hear it through the walls. The door hissed shut behind him silently on pneumatic hinges. The women entered moments later, footsteps echoing crisply on the tile as they discussed readings on a glowing holographic tablet that projected data in midair. The spike originated right here in Lab 7, Sarada said, voice calm and analytical, gesturing to the very console Naruto now hid behind. It's gone now, but the residual signature is impossible. It matches classified records of Uzumaki temporal experiments from the 4th era, and traces of the 7th zone chakra. Sumire leaned over the console beside her, frowning softly as she adjusted holographic settings with precise hand seals. And there's a massive chakra echo. Familiar somehow. Like the 7th Hokage's signature, but younger. Raw. Unrefined. Almost like he was 16 again. She paused, tilting her head thoughtfully. That can't be right. Temporal displacement on that scale would require power beyond anything we've theorized. Naruto's blood ran cold. 7th. They meant him. Old him, Hokage him. He couldn't hide forever. The room was small, filled with humming machines, glowing screens, and shelves of sealed samples, and Sarada's Sharingan would spot him in seconds if she activated it. The watch gave one final, desperate flicker in his pocket, a weak, dying spark of power. Enough for a short burst. Maybe minutes, if he was lucky. Time stuttered, slowing dramatically rather than fully stopping. The world moved in thick, syrupy motion. Sarada's hand inching toward a kunai pouch on her belt, Sumire's fingers glowing faintly with diagnostic medical chakra as she prepared a scan. The drain was excruciating. Blood trickled from Naruto's nose, then ears, his vision swimming black at the edges, but it held, just barely. He stepped out from behind the console, legs shaking. Both women froze in ultra-slow motion, Sarada's eyes widening fractionally, Sumire's lips parting in surprise. The sluggish time wavered dangerously, the drain pulling at his very life force like claws. He approached them with the reverence of a man touching living legends, Sasuke's daughter, his own future student and perhaps successor, Sumire, the quiet genius who had chosen the light and become one of the village's greatest minds. Sarada first. Standing before her, he cupped her face gently. Those sharp Uchiha features softened by maturity, red glasses framing eyes that held both her parents' fire and intellect. He kissed her slowly, deeply, tasting surprise and faint mint on her frozen lips. His hands unbuttoned her lab coat with trembling urgency, pushing it open to reveal the low-cut black top beneath. He tugged it down roughly, exposing a black lace brow that barely contained her full, high chest. Larger than her mother's, perfectly rounded and firm, pale with faint tan lines from training under the sun. He freed them completely, groaning at the weight in his palms, dark pink nipples already hardening under his thumbs as he pinched and rolled them. He sucked one hard into his mouth, biting down just enough to leave faint marks, while pinching and twisting the other until it swelled red and sensitive. Want the full uncensored 18+ scene? Only $4 on Patreon. 400+ scorching hot episodes. The watch gave out completely as he cleaned them frantically, wiping away every trace of evidence with medical cloths and sterilizing solution, redressing with shaking hands, repositioning them exactly as they'd been, Sarada reaching for her kunai, Sumire glowing with diagnostic jutsu, not a hair out of place. Time snapped back with violent, nauseating force. Both women gasped in unison, stumbling hard. Sarada caught herself on the console, thighs clenching violently as a sharp, broken cry escaped her lips. What the hell? Her hand flew between her legs, pressing desperately through her pants as her body convulsed with violent aftershocks, Sharingan flaring involuntarily red from the overwhelming intensity, tears of confusion in her eyes. Sumire collapsed to her knees with a broken, keening moan, hands clutching her heavy chest through her dress as her thighs trembled uncontrollably, wetness soaking visibly through the fabric. Sarada, someone, inside, everywhere. She shuddered hard, body rocking with waves of pleasure she couldn't control, gentle face flushed deep crimson. They exchanged wide-eyed, flushed looks. Heavy breathing, legs shaking, bodies aching with unexplained fullness and satisfaction, either understanding the sudden, overwhelming ecstasy or the deep, throbbing ache of being thoroughly claimed in every way. Naruto slipped out unnoticed through a side door, collapsing in an empty stairwell as blood dripped steadily from his nose, ears, and now the corners of his eyes. The watch was dead, black, lifeless, cracked beyond all repair. He was trapped in the future. But as he staggered through the advanced corridors, guided by instinct and faint memories of Boruto-era layouts, a soft voice called out from a nearby lounge. "Uncle Naruto!" He froze. Himawari Uzumaki, his little sister from his time, now a grown woman in her early 20s, stood in the doorway of a break room. Her blue eyes, his eyes, widened in shock, long dark hair with hints of red tied in twin tails, wearing a medical intern uniform that hugged a slender yet curvaceous figure inherited from their mother. The last spark of the watch flickered once more in his pocket, just enough. Time slowed again. Want the full uncensored 18+ scene? Only $4 on Patreon. 400+ scorching hot episodes. And Naruto, broken, desperate, and lost, gave in one final time.